On Christmas morning, I gave my brother the expensive watch he always wanted, only to learn he had been selling stories about my private to relatives for money. The gift I thought would bring us closer proved how far apart we really are. I need to tell about the moment I ruined everything. Not the moment I found out about Jakey. That came later. The moment I actually destroyed my marriage was 3 months earlier, standing in our kitchen, watching my husband David make pancakes for our kids while I texted another man. My brother Jake had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect job. Perfect girlfriend who became his perfect wife. Meanwhile, I was the sister who got pregnant at 22 and married David because it was the right thing to do. Don't get me wrong, I loved David, I loved our, but Jake's constant success made me question whether I'd settled too early. That morning, Jake was texting me about his promotion to regional manager. Again, his third promotion in 2 years while David was still working the same construction job he'd had since we got married. Sarah's planning this huge celebration dinner, Jake wrote. Should see the restaurant she picked. I told her money's no object now. I looked at David flipping pancakes in his paint-stained shirt and felt this twist in my stomach. When was the last time we'd been to a restaurant that wasn't Applebee's? Must be nice, I typed back. Or hey, chose stability over ambition. Nothing wrong with that. Those words hit like a stability over ambition, like my entire was some consolation prize. That's when Marcus walked in the coffee shop where I work part-time. He was new in town, drove a BMW, wore suits that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. And he noticed me immediately. Or too beautiful to look so sad, he said ordering his lat. It was a terrible line. I should have rolled my eyes and moved on. Instead I found smiling for the first time in weeks. Marcus started coming in daily. Always at 2 p.m, always with some comment that made me blush. He was everything David wasn't, polished, wealthy, worldly. He traveled to places I'd only seen in movies. He talked about art galleries and tastings like they were normal Tuesday activities. I run marketing for tech startups, he told me one afternoon. The money's insane, but the real high is building something from nothing. I thought about David's calloused hands and early morning shifts. About how he'd been talking about maybe starting his own contracting business, someday, for 8 years. Marcus made me feel sophisticated, important, like I was worth more than clearance rack clothes and generic cereal. The texting started innocent. He'd send photos from business dinners that looked like magazine spreads. I'd complain about customers or share pictures of my kids' art projects. Normal friendly stuff. Then Jake invited us to his company's Christmas party. The venue was stunning. Some historic mansion converted to an event space. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Sarah wore a dress that probably cost more than my car payment. And Jake moved through the crowd like he owned the place. This is my sister Emma, he'd say, introducing me to his colleagues. She's got real family woman. Code for peaked early, chose kids over career. Nothing interesting to say. I excused to the bathroom and found texting Marcus a selfie. We're here to save me from this insufferable crowd. Look incredible. He responded immediately. Those people don't deserve pine. For the first time all night I felt seen. David was having a great time talking construction with some guy who'd renovated his kitchen. He looked proud when people complimented Jake's success, like he was genuinely happy for my brother. It made me feel even worse about the resentment eating me alive. Brother really made something of himself, David said on the drive home. Think he'd be willing to give me some business advice. I'm serious about starting that company. I should have supported him, should have told him I believed in him. Instead I stared out the window and said, Jake's not exactly gonna have time for small town construction advice. Though in David's voice was unmistakable. Right, of course not. That night, I lay awake scrolling through Marcus's social media. Pictures from rooftop bars in the city, expensive restaurants, art gallery openings. That looked nothing like mine. I started imagining what it would be like to be with someone like him. Someone who could give me the Jake thought I'd given for stability. Marcus and I began meeting for coffee during his business trips to nearby cities. Just as friends, I told. Someone to talk to who understood ambition and dreams bigger than PTA meetings and grocery store coupons. Or too smart to be stuck in that town, he'd say. Could do anything wanted. He made me feel like the person I used to be before marriage and kids and mortgages. Before I became David's wife, and the kids' mom, and Jake's sister who settled down early. Christmas was approaching, and Jake kept dropping hints about this expensive watch he wanted. A Rolex his company's CEO wore to meetings. It's an investment piece, he'd say. The kind of thing successful people wear. I couldn't afford it, but I wanted to give Jake something that would make him proud of me for once. Something that would prove I wasn't just his small-town sister who'd given on her dreams. I started picking extra shifts at the coffee shop. Skipping lunches, buying generic groceries, anything to save money. David noticed the belt tightening but didn't complain. He assumed we were being responsible. Been working a lot lately, he said one evening, rubbing my shoulders while I paid bills. Everything okay financially? I should have told him about the watch. Should have explained why I was pushing so hard. Instead I lied. Just trying to build our savings, no, for when start business. His face lit like I'd given him the world. Really? Think I should do it? Of course, I said, hating for the deception. Marcus texted me that night, missing our conversations. When can I see again? I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. Soon. That single word felt like stepping off a cliff. The week before Christmas I drove 2 hours to the city and bought Jake's watch with money we couldn't afford to spend. I wrapped it carefully, imagining his face when he opened it. Finally, a gift that would make him see me as more than his disappointment of a sister. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and the smell of David's famous cinnamon rolls. The kids tore through their presents with pure joy while David and I watched from the couch, his arm around my shoulders. This is perfect, he whispered in my ear. Our family is perfect. I thought about Marcus's last text, still unanswered on my phone. About the coffee dates that were becoming something more dangerous. About the lies I was telling and the money I'd spent. Looking at David's genuine smile, I realized I was about to destroy the only perfect thing in my, but I was already too far gone to stop. Christmas dinner at my parents' house was always chaos, but this year felt different. Jake arrived late, making his usual grand entrance with expensive and stories about his latest business trip. Sarah hung on his every word like he was delivering gospel. I presented the watch during gift exchange, heart hammering as Jake unwrapped it. His face went white. Emma, this is a $15,000 watch. The room fell silent. My parents exchanged glances. David's hand found mine, squeezing gently. I wanted to get something special. I said, trying to sound casual. Worked so hard. Honey, Dad said carefully, this is incredibly generous, but where did I saved? I interrupted. Picked extra shifts. Jake was still staring at the watch like it might bite him. I can't accept this, it's too much. Just take it, Jake, please. The gratitude I'd expected never came. Instead, Jake pulled me aside after dinner. We need to talk, he said, leading me to Dad's study. Privately, he closed the door and turned to face me. How did really pay for this? I saved. Bull. I know what David makes. I know what part-time baristas make. The math doesn't work. My stomach dropped. Jake, what are implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Are having financial problems. What? It's none of business. It is when my sister drops 15 grand on a gift she can't afford. Are in trouble. To need money. The concern in his voice was genuine, but all I heard was condescension. Saint Jake, swooping in to save his screw-up sister again. I snapped. I wanted to give something nice for once. Sorry for trying to be generous. Generous with money don't have. He sat down heavily. Emma are scaring me. This isn't normal behavior. I left that night furious and humiliated. Jake had found a way to make my grand gesture about my failures instead of his success. The watch was supposed to prove I wasn't just his disappointing little sister, but somehow it had made things worse. Over the next few weeks, Jake kept texting. Asking if David knew about the watch, wondering if I needed to talk to someone. Offering to help with money troubles. Each message felt like a tiny paper. The golden boy couldn't fathom that his sister might want to do something impressive without his input or assistance. I started meeting Marcus more frequently. What had been innocent coffee dates became long conversations about our dreams and frustrations. He understood ambition in a way David never would. He saw potential in me that everyone else had written off. Or in that small town, he'd say, could be doing so much more. When he suggested a weekend conference in the city, could learn about marketing, maybe start own business, I said yes without thinking. I told David it was a work training seminar. The coffee shop is paying for it. I lied. Mandatory for all supervisors. He was so proud. Look at, moving in the world. Maybe this is the start of something bigger. His faith in me made the deception feel even more. The weekend was intoxicating. Marcus introduced me to his world. Expensive restaurants, networking events, people who talked about profit margins and market disruption like poetry. For 48 hours, I felt like the person I could have been if I hadn't gotten pregnant so young. Nothing physical happened, but the emotional betrayal was complete. I was sharing dreams and desires with another man that I'd never even voiced to my husband. I was imagining a different with someone else. When I got home, David had made my favorite dinner and bought flowers. How was weekend, sweetheart? Learned anything good? I lied about workshops and networking while he hung on every word, so excited about my fictional professional development. The guilt was crushing, but the alternative, admitting I'd fallen for someone else, seemed impossible. Then Jake called with news that changed everything. Emma, I need to tell something about Marcus Sullivan. My went cold. What about him? Eyes that the guy I've been meeting for coffee. Sarah saw with him at that restaurant downtown last month. I'd been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. We're just friends, Jake. He's helping me think about career options. Emma. Jake's voice was gentle but firm. Marcus Sullivan doesn't exist. Not the way he told. What are talking about? I had our IT guy run a background check. The company he claims to work for. Never heard of him. The business trips he talks about. The startup success stories. All lies. The room started spinning. That's impossible. I've seen his car, his clothes. Leased car. Designer knockoffs. He's running some kind of long con. Or wrong. I whispered. But doubt was already creeping in. I'm sending what we found. Emma, this guy is dangerous. He's done this before. Targets married women in small towns, builds emotional relationships, then asks for money. The documents Jake sent painted a horrifying picture. Marcus had been married 3 times, each marriage ending when his financial schemes collapsed. He'd been investigated for in 2 states. The wealthy marketing executive was a complete fiction. I scrolled through police reports and court documents with growing horror. This man I'd been sharing my deepest thoughts with was a predator who saw me as nothing more than a potential payday. When Marcus texted that evening asking to meet, I finally understood his game. He'd been building to ask for money, probably a business investment opportunity, or a temporary loan for a big deal. I'd been such an easy target. Unhappy wife, insecure about her brother's success, desperate to feel special. He'd played me perfectly. The worst part wasn't the deception itself. It was realizing how ready I'd been to throw away my marriage for a fantasy. How I'd emotionally cheated on David with a man who didn't even exist. I blocked Marcus's number and deleted all our conversations, but the damage was done. I'd crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. I'd lied to David repeatedly. I'd spent money we couldn't afford on a desperate attempt to impress Jake. And Jakey, the brother I'd resented for his success, had saved me from destroying my. That night, I sat in my car outside our house, watching David help our kids with homework through the kitchen window. The I'd been ready to abandon for a con man looked so precious from the outside. I should have gone inside and confessed everything. Should have thanked David for being steady and reliable and real. Should have called Jake to apologize for my jealousy and thank him for protecting me. Instead, I sat in that car until midnight, paralyzed by shame and self-loathing. The Marcus situation was over, but my marriage was still built on lies. The expensive watch still represented money we couldn't afford. The resentment toward Jake's success still poisoned every family gathering. I thought I'd dodged a bullet, but the real damage was just beginning to show. 3 months later, I was washing dishes when Jake knocked on our door. Not his usual cheerful arrival. He looked tired, almost defeated. We need to talk, he said, glancing at David in the living room. All of us. David muted the TV and joined us at the kitchen table. The kids were at school, the house unnaturally quiet. I have something to confess, Jake began. About the watch Emma gave me. And about other things. I started to interrupt, but he held his hand. Let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I've been lying to Olive for 2 years. About the promotions, the salary, the success. Most of it isn't real. David, what do you mean? I mean I got laid off 18 months ago. The company downsized and I was one of the first to go. The fancy dinners, the expensive lifestyle, it's all been funded by credit cards and lies. My world tilted sideways. Sarah's company party. I convinced everyone I still worked there. The CEO whose watch I admired. I'd never spoken to him in my. Jake, David said quietly, why didn't tell us? Jake's laugh was bitter. Because I'm supposed to be the successful one. The golden child who has it all figured out. How to admit we're a complete failure when that's entire identity. I felt like I was watching my childhood reshuffled in real time. All those years of jealousy. All that resentment over his perfect. And it had been a performance. The worst part. Jake continued, his voice breaking. As what I did to pay for it all. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through what looked like email threads. I've been selling stories about our family to those gossip blogs that pay for small town drama. No, the ones that repackage real stories as entertainment. I went cold. What kind of stories? Everything. Emma's marriage troubles when guys were fighting about money last year. Mom and dad's health scares. David's business dreams. Private conversations. Family secrets. I turned it all into content. The betrayal hit me like physical pain. How much? A few hundred per story. Enough to keep the pretense that I was still successful. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Sold stories about our private. For money. The blogs changed names and details, but Jake's voice was barely audible. People we know have been reading about our family drama without realizing it was us. I thought about all the times I'd confided in Jake about my struggles with David. About feeling trapped in small town. About the expensive coffee dates I'd been having with a man who turned out to be a Jake. I whispered. Tell me didn't write about Marcus. His silence was answer enough. Sold the story of me nearly having an affair. To strangers on the internet. Emma, I'm so sorry. I was desperate. And the money. The words exploded from me with violence I didn't know I possessed. TrueOffMyChest. Emma, please. No, don't get to apologize. Don't get to explain. Sold my marriage, my privacy, my mistakes to strangers for pocket change. David was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Marriage troubles. Expensive coffee dates. Emma, what is he talking about? The moment I'd been dreading for months had finally arrived, but not the way I'd imagined. Instead of a tearful confession where I controlled the narrative, my secrets were spilling out through my brother's desperate admissions. David, I can explain. We're having an affair. His voice was eerily calm. None, I mean not exactly. It was emotional, but nothing physical happened. And the guy turned out to be a con artist anyway. A con artist. David sat down heavily. So we're willing to have an affair, but it's okay because the other man was lying too. That's not what I meant. And Jake. David turned to my brother. Knew about this and sold it as entertainment instead of telling me. Jake was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was drowning and I made terrible choices. We're all drowning, David said quietly. The difference is most of us don't betray our families for money. I'd never heard David sound so cold. In 15 years of marriage, through fights and financial struggles and parenting stress, he'd never spoken with such finality. David, please, I begged. Let me explain about Marcus. Let me tell everything. Everything. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mean there's more. The watch. The lies about where the money came from. The weekend conference that was really a romantic getaway with a con man. The months of emotional cheating while he made me breakfast and supported my career ambitions. I told him everything, watching his face close off more with each revelation. By the end he looked like he was staring at a stranger. $15,000. He said finally. Money we didn't have. Spent on a watch for the brother who was selling stories about our marriage. I wanted to make him proud of me, I said weakly. By lying to me about our finances while I worked extra shifts to keep us afloat. Jake stood. I should go. This is my fault. I ruined everything. No, David said. We all ruined everything. But right should go. After Jake left, David and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. The kids will be home soon, he finally said. We need to figure out what to tell them. David, I know I messed, but we can fix this, can we? He met my eyes. Because I don't know who her anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have lied to me for months. Wouldn't have been planning to leave me for another man. I wasn't planning to leave. Weren't. Emma. Be honest for once. If Marcus had been real, if he'd asked to run away with him, would have said yes. The truth sat between us like a loaded. We both knew the answer. I whispered. I know do. But love isn't enough when don't respect me. When CR is something settled for instead of something we built together. The divorce papers arrived 6 weeks later. David was generous with custody and finances, more generous than I deserved. He never spoke badly about me to the kids, never used my affair as ammunition. Jake and I haven't spoken since that day. He moved back in with our parents, the expensive lifestyle finally collapsed. The watch I bought him sits in a pawn shop somewhere. He sold it to pay rent. Our extended family knows everything now. The gossip blog stories became local entertainment once people connected the dots. I'm the cautionary tale at family gatherings I'm no longer invited to. The kids split their time between houses now. They're adjusting, but there are moments when they look at me like they're trying to figure out who I really am. Like they're wondering if the mom they knew was as everything else. I work full time at the coffee shop now. The same job I once saw as beneath my potential. Marcus never came back after I blocked him, probably moved on to his next target in the next small town. Sometimes I drive past David's new apartment and see him through the window, helping our kids with homework or making them dinner. He looks peaceful in a way he never did during our last year of marriage. I destroyed everything for a man who didn't exist, with help from a brother who loved money more than family. The saddest part isn't losing David or Jake or that we built together. It's realizing that I had everything I needed all along, But I was too busy looking at what everyone else had to appreciate what was right in front of me. I gave my brother an expensive watch to prove I was worth something, only to learn he'd been selling my worth to strangers for years. But the person who destroyed my family wasn't Jake, and it wasn't Marcus, it was me, and that's a truth no amount of money can buy back.